Well, hello, everyone. This is Ron and Debbie, and we are back for another edition of Ask Ron. Ron, you ready to go, or do you have
Man,
some explaining to do first?
you mean about my shirt?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, my friend Ted Thomas sent me this shirt, so I felt obligated to wear it. But might be the last time you see it, but here it is. Right.
Well, I like what you said earlier that if you spill anything on it, at least you don't have to worry about that.
That's true.
All right. Okay, let's get started. First question is from Robert Straker from Oregon.
hmm
When someone dies, who inherits their lease home, rental homes, and so on? This is important to know because I had a friend who recently passed away
hmm
who was getting involved in real estate investing too. Although he had not bought any properties yet, who would have inherited his properties when he died?
Well, his next of kin, and if he doesn't have any, the government will take over, which is why you don't ever want to die intestate, meaning no asset or entity structuring, or I mean, no estate plan. Get your estate plan done so that what you get while you're alive will pass to who you want when you're gone. But also in the process, you'll learn how to protect yourself against predators while you're alive. And then you can go through life and not have to worry about somebody coming and taking your life's work away from you. But it sounds like he wasn't even married, so I don't know. It sounds like he doesn't even have kids. So that's a good question.
Sure.
That's up to the courts.
Okay. Next is from Thurston Davis from New York.
Okay.
When using a straight lease option, do you run it under a land trust or LLC?
A land trust and a lease option don't go together. Okay. That's a positive and a negative pole on a battery. You can't have a land trust unless a house is deeded into it. It's not funded until the house is deeded into the trust. If I'm going to do a lease option, there's no deed transferring. So there's no trust. You can't use a land trust and a lease option because there is no trust and it isn't funded. You do a lease option in an LLC's name, but that has nothing to do with a land trust.
And Thurston had one other question. Is there any other way to see if the owner will be open to your deal before going through the entire information sheet?
Well, actually, if you look at my closing script, you will see that within that second paragraph, I'm going to find out if I need to go through the entire script or not, because it point blank asks the seller. Sometimes we pay cash. Sometimes we make your payments until you're paid off in the future. However, the cash price will always be less than the terms price. So would you be interested in hearing other options other than all cash? If the answer is absolutely no, okay, your script is over. It's all built into the script. So get the closing script and read the script, and you'll see it's right there. Just read.
Okay, Holly Peterson from Oregon. I own a rental free and clear and would like to sell it to a tenant buyer.
Mhm.
I've only done this once. Do you have any strategies from the owner's standpoint?
Well, yeah, I have a lot of them. I teach them almost everywhere I go to teach. All right. But you didn't tell me if there's a loan on it and you're guaranteeing that loan, that might have an effect on it. Because if there is, I would certainly wouldn't sell it with owner financing, because then the bank could call the loan due, and then that would be on you.
Well, she does say, Ron, that she owns it
Oh,
free and
free and
clear.
clear. Okay.
Yep.
If you own it free and clear, this is an individual choice on your part. Do you really want to sell it? If you or do you really even want to lease it out, or do you want to just cash it out? Okay, this is a great time to probably list it with a realtor and cash it out if that's okay. You won't pay taxes on the sale because you lived in it. If you wait a couple of years before it actually sells, you will pay taxes on the sale. So what's going on in your life? Do you need the cash? Sell it. Don't need the cash, put a lease option tenant buyer in there and get a great big non-refundable deposit. Hold on to the golden goose and let it keep paying you for years and years and years. But that's assuming you've got enough cash to satisfy your needs right now, and you don't need to sell the house to get the cash.
All right. Next is from Adam John, and he is from Nebraska.
Hmm.
I am thinking of working with my dad on pretty house deals who lives in Canada. What is the ideal way to work on real estate deals with a family member out of state in order to avoid possible issues that would come up with joint ventures such as real estate?
Okay, I read that question is, what's the danger of having a family as partner? Is that the way you read it? Huh?
That's what it sounds like.
Okay. Well, obviously, there's a lot of danger there, and kind of depends on the relationship you have with your family members, but it also depends on what your partner doing and why do you need a partner. Now, if the Canadian wants to buy houses in the U.S. and that's why they wants to partner, that's great because you can certainly do that. In fact, a Canadian can buy houses in the U.S. anyway, even without you. So the real question is uh, what do you need a partner for? I can't tell you how many partnerships I've broken up when I look at one and say, "What do you need him for?" Well, I don't know. What do you need him for? Well, I don't know. Next thing you know, the partnership is over. It's not a bad thing because a lot of people just form the partnerships because they want the mental support, but in reality, one don't need the other, and sooner or later, one of them's going to say, "Well, you're not holding up your end," or why are we together? But if, in fact, the Canadian perhaps wants to put up some money to buy properties in the U.S., and the U.S. person is actually doing all the work and then splitting the profits, well, that makes sense. But you've got to take title to the property, and I take title to them in a land trust, one house. But now who's the beneficiary? So that's what you need to carefully consider. Because if you put each of you on there as beneficiary, then you can't sell the house without both parties consenting. So in my case, I partner with students, but it's a one house partnership. And when we take title in a land trust. I'm the beneficial interest. I work with a student on a consulting agreement, and that decides how the student gets paid because I don't want more than one entity on the title. In this case, would be on the land trust, and so I don't have to fight with that entity if we don't agree sometime in the future. I learned that one the hard way. Be very careful to who you put on the deed or you put on the trust agreement, because you can't do anything without their consent either.
Okay. That was a hard lesson learned, I guess, huh?
All my lessons are hard
Yeah.
lessons learned. Mhm.
All right. Next is from Autumn, and Autumn is from Washington. I have two sellers, both willing to do seller financing, but in making sure they were doing everything they needed to do, they contacted their banks to notify them that they were selling with seller
Oh my
financing.
God.
The
No,
banks, yeah,
please tell me
the
no.
banks said they couldn't do that and
No
warned
kidding.
against it.
What did you expect the banks to tell you? Hey, we don't contact banks anytime we buy a house. They can't stop the seller from selling the house. Only thing they can do is call the loan due, and they're not going to do that. But when loans do get called, it's because of stuff just like that. Somebody agitated the bank, or brought or attention to something that shouldn't have even been told about. I, I bought a lot of houses on wraparound mortgages, some subject to. I ain't never had the bank call a loan due. Of course, the payments were made. They had no reason to call it due. But I don't go sticking my nose in their face. Nah. I bought one. You come after me. But the real truth is, even if they call a loan due, I mean, I got several ways to stop the bank from actually foreclosing on the house anyway. But I'm not going to go into all of that right now. But don't ever let your seller call the bank. And if they've already done it, and the bank said, no, we're not going to give you permission, don't forget, you can always resort to a lease purchase. If you lease the house, the bank can't call a loan due because title hasn't transferred. And you can make the same amount of money.
So, but in this case, Ron, what should she tell? Now she's stuck with two sellers who had agreed to do seller financing, and
Okay,
now
just
their
go
banks
back
have.
and say, you screwed it up, so let's do a lease option.
Okay.
Because they did. They screwed it up.
Right.
You know, almost all of our problems as real estate investors are caused by the same thing, our big mouth. Okay.
Okay. All right. Next, Keith from Wisconsin. I have a seller that is willing to drop the price on her house to 145,000,
Mm-hmm.
while the comps look like they're around 170.
Mm.
I haven't been to the house yet, but it might need a little work. The problem is the seller has a reverse mortgage.
Mm.
Is there anything that can be done?
Well, yeah, but you didn't tell me how much the mortgage is. You said he want 145. Okay, just remember a reverse mortgage means that when the bank finds out that the seller has moved out, they can call the loan due and likely will because they're not receiving payments on that house. Or if the seller dies, of course. That will not stop me from buying the house on a wraparound mortgage, but or even subject to, but I got to have a short-term exit because I'm going to assume the bank's going to call that one due as soon as they find out. And for crying out loud, don't call the bank and say, I've sold the house. Just don't. They may not find out for years even. All right. So that gives me plenty of time to get it sold, but I'm not going to put a tenant buyer in there and give them a 2-year term knowing that that thing's got a reverse mortgage on it. It doesn't stop me a bit because they can't hurt me. And that's what you guys got to get in your head. You are not personally guaranteeing anything. Your land trust buys the house. Your land trust signs the note back to the seller. If they did call a loan due, they name your land trust and they name the seller. Your name is never going to appear in it because if you don't guarantee debt, you're going to obligated to pay that debt back. Okay, and you're morally obligated if you take over debt or doing seller financing. But if something like that comes up, bank calls the loan due. You're going to get a CYA letter signed at closing anyway if you follow my instructions that exonerate you from any liability if the bank calls the loan due. So again, it might be the reason why you can get the house cheap because it's got that loan on it. But you got to be prepared. You got to know, how am I going to get out if this problem arises? And honestly, even if the bank calls the loan due and you got a tenant buyer in the house, they're going to bend over backwards to help you because they don't want that house. That is the last thing a bank wants is a house. Last thing. So you can always go to them and say, I got this tenant buyer in there. Why don't you see if you can get them qualified and get it cashed out and get this over. But the banks will bend over backwards to work with you. But it works a lot better when you can't lose. Don't forget that part.
Okay. All right. Next is from Mary Ann Nunez from
Good old
California.
Mary Ann, where you been, girl?
Her in a while. So that's great that she's writing in again. Okay. Hi, Ron. Can you please explain why it's important that when the buyer is ready to cash out, that the bank knows that the buyer put money down and how much?
Because they're always going to want to prove the down payment. And that just means they're going to contact you and you show them proof that you put the money in your bank account. It's over. But they're always going to want to verify the down payment, just like they verify the employment. And they verify the income and whether they've been making their payments on time to whoever they're renting from or buying from.
Okay, Ron, that's all we have for this week.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all there is. Okay. All right. We'll see you guys next week. So go out there and get to work and get some deals working and keep those questions coming. See you then.